Welcome back to Beyond the Reading. Tonight, we'll be continuing our discussion of past lives with your hosts Justin and Roseanne Cardoza. If this is your first time joining us, we'd like to welcome you to get caught up by checking out the first installment of Past Lives. We've put a link in the description. Now, also, if you enjoy any part of this program, please give us a like and a subscribe. We'd really appreciate it.
You know, a big belief I have is the whole old souls, new souls, and we could go on and on about that, and we'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
But back to
what
reincarnations.
About these kids? I mean, when we start talking about children and reincarnation and them remembering.
Yeah.
You know, one of the wild stories that we heard about was a kid, I don't remember where he's from, but he's definitely from the United States. I think he was from Louisiana. And the story was that, you know, when he was a young, maybe 3 years old, 4 years old, he remembered his past life as a World War II pilot.
Yeah. Well, you know, here's the thing. Let me just tell you, first of all, for those who are not knowledgeable about past lives and children, this is a topic that has come up quite a bit with mothers that I know that have children the same age as my youngest child. My oldest child is going to be 12. And when he was growing up, you know, when he was a baby, Facebook and stuff really wasn't around. I mean, I wasn't involved in groups and mommy, you know, support groups and stuff like that. But with my youngest, I see this trend where parents, you know, these moms are talking about their kids waking up with night terrors and being scared of things. And, you know, it starts, you know, generally at the age of anywhere from 2 to 3. So this has been documented. It's been studied by a University of Virginia psychiatrist named Jim Tucker. He started a research project in 2008. And he started going around and interviewing children who could remember their past lives.
Huh.
What's fascinating is that story of that child. Okay, the one who could, I mean, he remembered details of World War II, you know, his fighter jets. He knew where his plane went down. One really interesting story that while you're looking that up so you can get the facts. Right. I remember when I was researching stuff because I was trying to figure this stuff out with our own son, and we'll talk about his story here in a second, I remember going on a website and it was about children with past lives. And it was this mother in England. And she was talking about her son. I mean, they lived in Great Britain. And her son was fascinated with fire trucks. And he knew streets in New York City. And he knew all the names of the buildings. And he just, you know, he was just obsessed with it. And he kept saying, you know, he kept calling himself Lou, you know, and his mother, again, you know, in England, you know, Lou is different. It's bathroom, right? But he was like, no, you know, they called me Lou. And she didn't really understand until she started going on and researching, you know, on this message board.
So she was looking for a guy named Lewis, right?
Right. She was looking for a man named Lou.
Right.
And he remembers being killed. He vividly remembers being killed in the World Trade Center. And so she went on this message board and she was trying to gather information, basically. Right. And so she was looking for a man named Lou, and somebody goes, no, you're not understanding that firefighters, their ranks, you know, lieutenant, they call them Lou.
Right, it's a term of endearment.
Right, and she was just blown away. I mean, that he could remember buildings. He knew exactly where he died.
Yeah. And they're in England. How would he know that?
You would never know that. there's been a lot of documented information. And so kind of, this is the short of it. And let me get this information out, because there are a lot of parents out there who have young children who deal with these types of things and they dismiss them. And I find it to be so disheartening. And if you've ever seen the movie A Sixth Sense, children that have that sense, and obviously he could see dead people, but it's not really that different, because, a past life can migrate into other abilities. Some can, again, that goes into another story. But if you remember the mother, she wasn't very keen. She just, like a lot of parents do, they dismiss things. And the most important thing is that imaginary friends, this usually starts around 2 or 3 years old. And most parents dismiss an imaginary friend as just an imaginary friend. But that imaginary friend may not be so imaginary. So they start remembering their past life is usually around 2 or 3. And the facts is that they start to lose the memories of their past life and the statements that they make to people by the ages 6 or 7 years old.
So basically, if somebody has a child that's 2, 3 years old and they're starting to talk and they're telling you a story that may seem like gibberish, a parent should really stop and listen,
right?
Because that story may end up making sense in some way or fashion, and it'll make you take pause,
right?
Instead of just blowing it off.
Because it's kind of like a twofer. Let's be real here, okay? Because when they're 2 and 3 years old, it's not just about the past life. There's some kids who don't remember their past life. There's some kids who do, and they're not able to verbalize it. Okay, and that's where night terrors come in. That is I know a lot of parents out there have had their kids waking up in the middle of the night screaming and, freaking out, and they, you just had a nightmare. And then it kind of starts a trend where they want the light in the closet, or a light on, or they don't want to sleep in their own bed, and they become scared. And it's because the night dreams, the terrors, they're remembering something. When they start to fall asleep, that they go into that unconsciousness where that twilight, and they can remember. And what's happening is their end of their past life, how they passed away, is overlapping.
Kind of bleeding in.
It's bleeding in with their new life, and it freaks them out, and they don't know how to react. And so it is said that 70% of the children who claimed to remember their past life actually died a violent or unnatural death, which would explain the night terrors, right?
Yeah, sure.
And also, 60% of the children who claim to remember their past life or made past life statements are male, which is true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
From our experience.
For our experience, absolutely. And 90% of the children who have made past life statements were actually the same sex that they were in their past life. Right. So if they were male, they were male in their past life.
Right.
So the most important thing as a parent is to be extremely astute when they're having those terrors. It's not a nightmare.
But here's the thing.
It's confusion. They're confused.
There's one more statistic that can help people, and this statistic is the fact that the median length of time between the time someone has passed and reincarnates is only 16 months. That's the average. So what that tells me is that if they passed away 16 months and then they're born, 16 months later, or even 2 years, 3 years, that's still within your time that you can remember maybe an event, especially if it was something major. A major event,
right.
Or at the very least, you should be able to take the information that they give you, and maybe do a little research and find out whether or not it's real.
So my most important thing that I want to stress here is that with parents with children who are having night terrors, who are afraid to go to sleep at night, who are kind of whispering in that corner, don't dismiss it.
Right.
Do not dismiss it. Okay, so how do we help those parents? Okay, because this is something I feel very, very passionate about. And I feel that so many parents just brush it off. And I think, oh my God, those poor children. So with our own son, who is 12 years old, his event started happening when he was about 2.
Well, let me tell this story first.
Okay, you go ahead.
This one here is a little boy named James.
Okay, this isn't our son. This isn't our son.
Yeah. This is another very popular story, one that I found absolutely fascinating. Now, at the time, James was a 4-year-old little boy from Louisiana, and he believed that he was a World War II pilot. Now, he said that he was shot down over Iwo Jima, okay? So his parents first realized that James started having nightmares, waking up and screaming, airplane crash and plane on fire. See, so there you go. There's the night terrors right there. Now, the weird thing was that he knew details about the World War II aircraft that would be impossible for someone his age to know. Heck, I mean, it's probably impossible for most folks our age to know. So, for example, when his mother referred to an object on the bottom of a model plane as a bomb, he corrected her. All right, he told her, no, that's not a bomb. That's a drop tank. You know, and another time, he and his parents were watching a documentary, and the narrator called the Japanese plane a Zero, and James was like, no. He insisted that it was a Tony. All right, now in both of those cases, James turned out to be right. Now, he also insisted that in his previous life, he had flown off a ship named the Natoma, which, as they later discovered, was a World War II aircraft carrier, the USS Natoma Bay. And he also said that his previous name was also James. And, shockingly, the USS Natoma Bay Squadron, there was a pilot named James Houston, or Houston. I don't know. I don't mean to butcher the name. But he was killed in action over the Pacific Ocean. All right. So now this Dr. Tucker that Roseanne had mentioned earlier, he was the one who was looking into this. He obtained additional documents for several of little James's statements. They were made before anyone in the family had even heard of, the guy or the USS Natoma Bay. So you have to ask yourself, could a 2-year-old in Louisiana remember being a World War II pilot shot down over the Pacific?
Absolutely.
I say, no.
No.
How would he know that?
You can't. You don't know that. That's the thing. That's the beautiful thing about it. But you've got to be... I mean, look, there's some cases where it's not as detailed as that, okay? I just think that, some parents... they might miss the actual, because they might actually miss that opportunity of what they're saying and just dismiss it as like, oh, they must have heard that somewhere, but again, it also goes with what they're being shown on television or what their environment is. So let's talk about Dominic, our son.
Right. Okay.
So Dominic was... he was an infant. He was probably like 6 months old. And we were flipping through the TV, and I think he was sitting like in his little bouncer. And you had the Science Channel on. And let it be known that I am not...
Yeah, I was flipping through, and it was
Space Week.
Space Week.
And I am not at all a space fan at all. I'm not into science, any of that. It's just, Okay, so he was flipping through, and there happened to be a picture of, what was it? I think it was Earth, right? It was like the solar system.
It was like the solar system or something. It was something along those lines, like,
Yeah, and he just, looked up. Our son looked up at the television. His face, he just stopped, and his eyes got so big, and he was like... Yeah,
he kind of glazed over.
He glazed over, and he was just like... Mesmerized, absolutely. And it caught our attention because it was just like everything stopped, and it was just so odd, it caught us off guard. So, okay, so, as he progressed, he started to have a friend that came along. And, again, let me just kind of preface this. Justin is, a psychic medium, but from the time that Dominic was 1, I mean, he never knew what Justin could do until he became like 9 years old. We never discussed that with him because of the events that had transpired. So to kind of keep his story untainted.
Right.
So he started to have nightmares. Well, let me go back. He liked the space thing. So we thought, Halloween was coming up, and we took him to the Halloween store.
Well, this is much later, because that was like when he was a little baby.
Yeah, but he was like about 2 at this point now. Because
Right,
everything
you
happens.
gotta fast forward for
well, yeah, I
folks so that they
am.
understand.
I am. I am
Like
fast forwarding.
2 to 3 years old, somewhere around
Somewhere,
there.
yeah.
He
And
was
so-
able to walk and everything.
Yeah, and we went to the Halloween store, and we took him looking around, and he had absolutely no interest in Halloween whatsoever. But we brought him over by the astronaut
Well,
stuff.
hey, do you want to be an astronaut following? And his response was literally, no, 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 no. And he ran off.
Yeah, he freaked out.
It's
And it
odd
was
response.
odd. It was so odd. And we were just like, why? And he told us, he was like, no, 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 no.
And that was it.
That was it. So, you just, okay, and you just kind of move on. And over...
Fast forward to the summertime.
Yeah.
Right.
So, eventually we got, I was in the pool with them, in the summertime. And let me explain that these events have taken place over
A period of time.
Yeah, very long periods of time. And once I realized that after this next statement that you were playing on his grounds. So fast forward, he's probably about 3.5, maybe 4.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in the pool swimming. And he goes to me, it's just him and I, and he goes, oh, Mommy, he goes, this is how the astronauts learn how to walk in space. And I turned to him and I said, what? And he goes, yeah, this is how they learn how to walk in space.
He said, I remember, he said that this is how we spacewalk, how you learn spacewalk.
Yeah, how they learn how to walk in space.
Right.
And I said, and now, for some reason, I would always react very calmly, even though inside I was like, oh my God, like freaking out. I would calmly ask him, and I was very careful. I would never ask him leading questions. So I said to him, oh, really? And how do you do that? And how do you walk in space? And he said, oh, that thing that comes out of your back. And he was, showing me motioning to his back where they would attach, I guess the that attachment, the hose, with their spacesuits. Yeah. And it was like, oh, okay. And I go, well, what color are your spacesuits? And he was like, orange. And I go, really? I go, wow, that's really neat, And I think I proceeded to ask him a few more questions. And then he just kind of would start jibber-jabbing about something else, and it didn't make any sense. And then that would be the end of the conversation.
Right.
Inside, I was freaking out because I was like, oh my God, orange. Oh my God, orange.
Now, see, the orange thing threw me because I was like, no, they're white.
Right.
Because
right.
when I think of an astronaut, I think of them in the spacesuit.
Right. So Justin comes home from work, and I tell him, and he said orange. I recant the whole story to him, and I tell him the spacesuits are orange. And he goes, well, what does that mean? I go, so I pull up a picture of, one of the space shuttle's crew members, when they're boarding the space shuttle, and their suits are orange. And Justin was like, oh my God. And he's like, how did you even know that? I'm like, because they've been orange for a while. I think they switch it up like from blue and orange, but I just remember, orange. So, then, there was, he started to kind of have conversations about, again, it would always take place in the pool. And again, this was like over, months at a time, maybe a couple of months would go by and we'd be in the pool and we would, if I tried to push, or extract information from him, I would never get direct answers. It would be, a kind of a nonsensical answer. But I think at one point, he started to tell me a little bit more, and I was like, so what kind of, do you like, space, like astronauts? He was like, oh, no, mommy, no. I fall down and went, boom, I hurt my knee. And I was just like, what? And he was like, no. I fell down and I hurt my knee. And I didn't understand what he meant, but he didn't want to have nothing to do with it. And this was after me showing him a picture, I think, of like the space shuttle. And he didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. He said, no, I hurt my knee. I fell down and hurt my knee. And I was like, okay. And when he saw a picture of the space shuttle, because at this point I did show him a picture of the space shuttle just to kind of see if it would trigger something. He was too young to know. I mean, he was like 3, Yeah. He said, oh, yeah, that's O-Body. O-Body. And I was like, O-Body? And it was the picture of a space shuttle.
Right.
Space shuttle.
Taken off.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, that's
O-Body. And he just kept talking about O-Body. And
just randomly here and there.
Yeah, and he would talk to, people, and he would talk to, like, just friends of ours, and he'd go on and on about talking about space. And, there'd be a couple of times where I was actually able to extract information out of him in the pool, where he, again, our deepest conversations took place over the summertime in the pool. There became a point as he got a little bit older. I think it might have been around 4.5, where the whole falling down and hurting his knee became, oh, they were mean to me. They were mean to me up there, and they pushed me out, and I didn't understand that. And I would ask him what he did on O-Body. And he said that he was protecting Earth. Now,
of course, I turn around immediately and I say, protecting Earth? What were you protecting it from? I'm wanting the juice.
Right.
That's when he kind of went off into La La Land.
Now, let me just kind of explain something about our son. Our son has never, ever... he has never taken a liking to toys. He never played with toys. From the time he was little, he never played with a rattle. He never played with any kind of toy. Toys R Us was like, that was no fun. But he just was obsessed with electronics. And to this day, he is still obsessed with electronics. I mean, he, could read and... I started teaching him how to write when he was 3 years old, and so he was always, just interested in electronics and
the remote control,
cell phones. I mean, he was obsessed with that, and he loved computers, and he's just crazy about that.
All sorts of communications devices.
Right. So, then there was a name that popped up. I'm not going to give out the name, just for privacy reasons, but there was a name that popped up that he kept talking about, and we kind of had some ideas in our head that he was that he was a part of the Columbia space shuttle disaster, which happened in 2003.
Right.
And he was born in 2005.
Right.
Right.
And basically, what happened was once we took all the information, he fell out. He in essence, he was like, it started with, oh, this is how you train. Well, this is how you spacewalk in the pool. And when Roseanne told me that, I was like, well, yeah, that is how they train for a spacewalk, and NASA is in a pool. And, the whole orange jumpsuit thing and the thing coming out of his back and, body.
Which, I researched that and I have no idea. I don't know if that's classified or whatever, but as he got older, I even went to great lengths to find Columbia transmissions on YouTube. I remember when we did that. So I would try to do things to kind of like
see if you could trigger them.
And
you did once.
And I did, yeah.
The one of the weirdest things was you pulled up a transmission from NASA, and immediately he put headphones on. And
he had headphones on.
Yeah, he had headphones on, but he grabbed a pen and paper instinctively.
Right, and was just trying to write on the pad
as he was listening. But then he kind of drifted off out of that and he started drawing.
Yeah.
But it was like he just weird.
It was like he went to attention. It was like, but I think the catalyst of it all, and this is where I'll kind of end it, was one of the lasting things. One of the last few things that he did was when I was putting him to bed. And he was falling asleep. I actually, put him to sleep in our bed, and Justin was in bed, and he was kind of already asleep, and I was walking around the bed, and he was kind of in twilight, and I was like, okay, good night, and he was like, he looks up at me, and his eyes are all kind of glazed over, as most kids are when they're just, right about in that twilight zone, and he says, he looks up at me, and he goes, Mommy, he's like, I have to get back to Earth. I miss my wife. And I just I froze in my tracks, and he's just staring at me, and he's got tears welling up in his eyes. And I said, really calmly, I said, what did you just say? And he said, Mommy, I have to get back to Earth. I miss my wife. And I could see that, he isn't present. He is, but he isn't. It was just so weird. And I mean, he had the tears in his eyes. Like, it was so heartbreaking. And at that moment, I'm freaking out inside. But I go over to him and I go, Dominic, I go, you're okay. You're here on Earth. You're with Mommy and Daddy. You're safe. You're okay. You're fine. And I just reassured him, and he laid down and he went to sleep. And then I proceeded to wake up Justin and freak out over it because I couldn't believe it. And it was the most sad thing, and it's accumulation of all the things that have occurred. It started with night terrors of him fighting in his sleep, like he was actually fighting, almost mimicking he was falling or
and here's the thing,
there's just so many things that occurred over 6 years.
There are a couple of things that obviously Roseanne has left out of the story just out of respect.
Right.
But it came down to, okay, he was clearly an astronaut.
Right.
Orange suit, spacewalk, training in the pool, and falling. Okay.
Right.
So to us, we're automatically thinking, "Oh my God, there were only two space shuttle disasters that we could think of,
right?
Without going back further,
right? Well, and there was a name. He gave us
a name.
Right.
And when we went back and researched that name,
yeah,
that name was actually it
was on Columbia. It was Columbia. Yeah. And it was right in that time zone. It was perfect. And it's odd because
while we don't have any, we don't outside verification or proof.
Have no idea what O-body is. Absolutely none. And this is the first time I'm actually telling the story publicly. We've told it to friends. He doesn't recall any of this now. It is totally wiped from his memory.
It's totally foreign to him. But I tell you what,
I have it written down.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Crazy.
Though, when we went back and we looked at the picture in when your kid tells you something like that, and if you see a picture of the other person, it does something to you on the inside, and your spirit tells you the truth.
You could see it because I mean you're a medium, so
you know, for me at least, I was like, oh my god, that's I
mean, and he's different. He's a different person. I mean, he's definitely an old soul. There's no doubt about it. There's just things about him that do not he just lives like he's a little adult, you know, and always has been, you know. It's like he has always carried himself that way, right? You know, and most importantly is that, you know, he was never scared of it. I think for parents, I think they need to know that if your child is experiencing something like this, not to dismiss it. Most importantly,
and know that it's not freaky.
It isn't freaky. It's normal. It's normal. But
there are a lot more cases out there
but do not lead them. Right. Do not put information in their head. When Dominic started coming out with this information, I made sure, and Justin made sure, that we did not even remotely go around anything that had to do with anything space or science. I didn't want that knowledge to be corrupted, you know, because I wanted the information that he gave me to be true and, you know, genuine, that it came from him. And you can listen, and once they get to a point to where, you know, if you ask them open-ended questions, the other side will shut them off. You know, they will shut them off. Right. You know, it's to protect them, you know, and that's pretty much that's really it. Yeah. And I mean, it will go away, and it was really sad when it did go away.
Yeah. So listen to your kids. You know, you'll know if they're just telling you, you know, gobbledygook, but you never know. They may drop a gem on you. Right. And it'll just blow your mind.
And if they do, write it down.
Write it down.
And be patient, because we got this information over, you know.
Over a year and a half.
No. It was like 4 or 5 years time, you know. I mean, it went on till he was about six and a half years old. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, it can go on, but there might be months where you don't have any incidents or information that comes up. So don't push them for information. Just let them tell you and lead you. Thank you for tuning in. This concludes part 2 in our final segment of Past Lives. Be sure to subscribe to get updates for future episodes, and like us on Facebook, as well as joining our Facebook group Beyond the Reading. All links are in the description. Again, this is Roseanne Cardoza for Beyond the Reading.